bad. If it's pleasurable, it's good. So why are we removing this particular method of discipline that is applicable to that stage of development of the child?
Your Excellency, in recognizing the use of physical stimuli and the presence of such studies which promote such physical stimuli, respondents believe and have found in other researches that a method called timeout is actually used in kindergartens and in preschools where the children are around 2 to 6 years old. And when the child is sent to a timeout, there is a positive reaction to the child in admitting and understanding that there is actually something wrong done without the use of physical violence on the child. There is immediate compliance, yes, and there's also a long-term behavioral change in the child without exposing him to the risk of the violence of corporal punishment. That is our first method actually that we are proposing, Your Excellency, which is called negative punishment. As described by Skinner, this is a manner of punishment where an object of desire, privilege, or maybe a possession of the child is taken away as a consequence to an undesirable act done by the child to when he or she would break the rules. This is actually a very viable alternative to corporal punishment, seeing that it gives the child the benefit of the analogy of what would actually happen to him or her once he is in the outside world. That the authorities of the state do not necessarily punish a person who has transgressed the law violently or physically, but he is actually punished through a fine, through incarceration, through removal of some privileges, Your Excellency. To further contrast this with regard to corporal punishment, in corporal punishment...
But isn't a timeout also subject to abuse? Like, for example, you tell a child, stay in your room at 6 p.m., you don't get any dinner. So that is also a deprivation of the child that could be tantamount to abuse, or to a certain extent, you're depriving something that is essential to the child. So what's so different between that and corporal punishment, which you so demonize?
Your Excellency, in corporal punishment, with regard to your question, in corporal punishment, Your Excellency, there is violence, there is a trauma, there is a risk for the developmental issues in the child. For timeout, with regard to the removal of the right to eat, with regard to your example, Your Excellency, in timeout, it's not necessary. It's only applicable. In timeout, Your Excellency, it's not necessary that the child does not eat. It is open as well to abuse, but it is not as traumatic. It is not as detrimental, and it does not pose a slippery slope for the parent to actually use it as a doorway, as an entryway to abuse, as exemplified by such studies. Also,
but I think my point is, any kind of punishment can lead to abuse. Like, a reasonable corporal punishment, you say, could lead to the death of the child. In the same way, the deprivation of certain privileges to a child can also lead to certain abuses. So if everything can be abused, then let's ban everything.
Not necessarily, Your Excellency. We're not pushing for the banning of everything, since the main goal of every
correct, yes, you're not pushing for the banning of everything, but if the reason why you don't want corporal punishment is because it can be abused, then you can use that same logic to go against anything else that you're defending.
Your Excellencies believe that to the best interest of the child, and that with regard to corporal punishment, at the beginning of corporal punishment, the best interest of the child is already taken away. And with regard to timeout and its subjectivity to abuse, there is still the idea of the best interest of the child, and it is paramount to such situation.
But if it's subject to abuse punishment, necessarily, it would also not serve the best interest of the child.
That would, Your Excellency, that would be in abuse of the parent in himself, of the child, of his rights, of his duties, which is why respondents believe, Your Excellency, that it is not only the duty, the right, or the responsibility, or the authority which should be taken into consideration when it comes to the disciplining of the child, but in fact, it must be in his best interest. So in a parent, with regard to the way he or she would discipline his child, it must be also taken into consideration the rights of the child, which we see that it is also in the right of the child to be disciplined and shaped into a productive member of society in such a way that he must be reasoned with, he must be allowed to internalize such norms, such lectures, and such lessons from experiences, which is not available to corporal punishment. Because in corporal punishment, Your Excellency, as in contrast, there is only fear. The child would learn to fear the pain, to fear the parent, and to fear the exact consequence. The child would take little to no understanding from this experience, Your Excellency.
Ms. Speaker, how about if we go back to personal experience, like say the experience of your parents? Obviously, they grew up under a regime of corporal punishment. Would you consider them misplaced individuals?
Not necessarily, Your Excellency. Stating that they are misplaced individuals is a very it's not necessary, Your Excellency, since judging from personal experience, corporal punishment may not actually lead to extreme psychological disorders or displacement or being a delinquent, but there is actually this culture of violence that has been cultivated. And as in addressing so, Your Excellency, there is a progressive change in the disciplining of the children, and we are now in the generation where the progressive change is actually taking effect, where there are now actually alternative methods to address and to discipline the child without resulting to corporal punishment, Your Excellency.
And therefore, we are yet to see the effects of banning corporal punishment vis-a-vis implementing corporal punishment. In other words, you see a generation of your parents who underwent corporal punishment, whereas now we are evolving into a new generation of banning corporal punishment, the effects of which we are not yet clear.
The effects of which, Your Excellency, has actually been found in a study which has been seen in a sample that most children nowadays would see reasoning as the most fair form of disciplining, as opposed to corporal punishment, which was rated as least fair. Your Excellency, seeing that my time is about to expire, and if it may please the court, may I ask for 5 more minutes of my time? Thank you, Your Excellencies. Going back, Your Excellencies, such form of punishments, although we are yet to see the actual effects of it, is actually being implemented in other countries as well. And these are first world countries, Your Excellencies, as stated earlier on. That these alternative methods of disciplining, Your Excellencies, would actually have a better and more beneficial long-term effect to the child, given that they are more integrated into society, given that their ability to communicate is open and increased, since in one of the alternatives, which is reasoning and internalization, the parent would actually take the time to actively participate in the disciplining of the child without the use of corporal punishment. Speaking with the child and opening such a dialogue with their parents would actually mean that they would reinforce the child's self-esteem, seeing that his opinions would be heard and would matter to the parents, and also his sense of morals, a stronger sense of morals, is instilled within the child, and his own moral code is fortified because he's able to internalize these lessons, these social norms, without the use of such physical violence, which is actually proven to be traumatic to the child, to actually just hinder the child's ability to understand and to hinder the child's ability to internalize, again, the point the parents are trying to make, Your Excellencies. It is actually in this that respondents would submit that it is actually possible for parents to discipline their children without the use of corporal punishment with effective means necessary. And of course, this method being a novelty in the Philippines, given the fact that it is well within our culture that corporal punishment is accepted when it is administered on the children.
Precisely. Isn't the abolition of corporal punishment more of a Western imposition into an entirely different cultural mindset that could be seen as a form of neo-colonialism, but in the realm of the domestic?
Not necessarily, Your Excellency, since it is also found in our civil code that any custom or culture that is seen to be against public policy or the basic right
policy of the U.S.
Sir, Your Excellency, it is also against the public policy respondents believe to hurt the child. To inflict abuse and pain on the child is also against public policy.
No, because it seems as if in the Philippines, the public policy is, if you hurt a child for no reason, that's bad. If you hurt a child to make him a better citizen or a better person, that's okay. So aren't we turning this upside down by looking into the Western imposition that as long as you hurt the child, you lay a finger at the child, that's bad?
Your Excellency, if I may, this is not possible under the Equal Protection Clause. Why